Samuel Whitehorse's weathered hands trembled against the dying wolf's matted fur, her labored breathing the only sound cutting through Montana's dawn silence. Blood soaked through his flannel jacket as he stumbled down the mountain trail, each step a prayer to his late wife Dorothy. This wasn't just any wolf. Her unusual blue eyes held a recognition that made his heart stop. "Help me, girl," he whispered, feeling her heartbeat flutter against his chest like a caged bird. The GPS chip embedded in her neck caught the first rays of sunlight, its red light blinking frantically. Someone had been tracking her. Behind him, branches snapped as heavy footsteps gave chase through the wilderness. His granddaughter Emma's laughter from yesterday echoed in his memory. She'd begged him to take her camping next weekend. "We're not dying today," Sam growled, adjusting his grip on the wolf's limp body. But as engine sounds roared closer through the trees, one terrifying question burned in his mind. Who wanted this wolf dead badly enough to hunt an old man through hell itself? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. 3 years had carved deep lines around Samuel Whitehorse's gray eyes, each one a testament to sleepless nights spent listening for Dorothy's voice in the Montana wind. At 66, the retired Army veterinarian moved through his empty ranch house like a ghost haunting his own life, coffee growing cold in cups meant for two. The Whitehorse Ranch sprawled across 200 acres of pristine wilderness, once alive with the sounds of rescued animals under Dorothy's tender care. Now silence pressed against the windows where her makeshift animal hospital had operated in defiance of federal regulations. She'd saved everything from injured hawks to abandoned bear cubs, earning whispered gratitude from locals and stern warnings from wildlife officials. "Every creature deserves a fighting chance," Dorothy used to say, her hands gentle as prayer over broken wings and wounded hearts. Sam could still see her silhouette in the barn doorway, backlit by golden sunset, calling him in for supper after another 18-hour day of healing. Their children worried constantly. Michael, 35 and successful in his Denver medical practice, arrived monthly with brochures for assisted living facilities tucked discreetly in his briefcase. "Dad, you can't keep living out here alone," he'd argue, his voice carrying the weight of professional concern and filial duty. Sarah, 32 and teaching elementary school in Billings, offered gentler persuasion during weekend visits with her children. 8-year-old Emma possessed her grandmother's intuitive connection with animals, often sitting motionless for hours watching deer graze near the fence line. 10-year-old Lucas collected feathers and interesting rocks, building elaborate fairy houses Dorothy would have adored. Their presence brought temporary warmth to the ranch, but their departures left Sam counting days until the next visit. Financial pressures mounted like storm clouds. Dorothy's cancer treatments had drained their savings, leaving Sam with mortgage payments that gnawed at his military pension. The bank's certified letters arrived with increasing frequency, each one stamped with dates that crept closer to foreclosure. Pride prevented him from asking his children for help. They had their own families to support. Evenings found Sam on the front porch rocker Dorothy had painted sky blue, nursing bourbon and listening to coyotes sing to the stars. Sometimes he caught himself setting 2 plates for dinner, muscle memory refusing to accept her absence. The refrigerator still held her favorite strawberry jam, expired but untouchable, a shrine to sweeter days. Local ranchers nodded respectfully when they encountered him in town, remembering Dorothy's kindness during calving seasons when veterinary bills stretched thin. But their sympathy felt heavy as winter coats, and Sam found himself avoiding Main Street, taking longer routes to the feed store where he bought supplies for the 3 horses he couldn't bear to sell. The land itself seemed to mourn Dorothy's passing. Her vegetable garden surrendered to weeds, and the barn cats grew wild without her gentle hands filling their bowls each dawn. Yet something deeper than grief anchored Sam to this place, a bone-deep certainty that Dorothy's spirit lingered in every shadow, waiting for him to remember how to live again. Dawn painted the Montana sky in shades of amber and rose as Sam stepped onto his front porch, coffee steaming in the crisp morning air. The familiar ritual of checking fence lines had become his meditation, a way to fill the hollow hours that stretched endlessly without Dorothy's laughter echoing through the house. His boots crunched against frost-kissed grass as he made his way toward the north pasture, where the land rolled into dense pine forest. The sound hit him first, a low, keening whine that raised the hair on his arms. It wasn't the usual chorus of coyotes or the plaintive call of a hawk. This was something deeper, more desperate, threaded with an agony that made his veterinary instincts snap to attention. Sam quickened his pace, following the sound through a grove of aspens whose golden leaves trembled like worried whispers. He found her in a clearing where wildflowers should have bloomed, instead discovering a scene that made his stomach clench with rage. The wolf lay twisted in an illegal snare, its cruel metal teeth buried deep in her right foreleg. Blood matted her silver-gray fur, and her breathing came in shallow, labored pants. But it was her eyes that stopped Sam cold. Brilliant blue, unusual for a wolf, filled with an intelligence that seemed almost human in its plea for help. "Easy, girl," Sam whispered, dropping to his knees despite the sharp protest from his arthritic joints. The wolf's ears flattened against her skull, but she didn't try to bite as he examined the snare. Professional assessment warred with emotional reaction as he noted the infection already spreading from the wound, the dehydration evident in her sunken flanks. As his hands moved over her body, checking for additional injuries, his fingers encountered something that made him freeze. Embedded beneath the skin of her neck was a small, hard lump, clearly artificial. Someone had been tracking this wolf, and the implications sent ice through his veins. This wasn't random poaching, this was targeted hunting of a specific animal. The wolf whimpered as Sam worked to free the snare, her unusual blue eyes never leaving his face. Something about those eyes tugged at his memory, like a half-remembered dream dancing just beyond reach. Dorothy's voice seemed to whisper in the wind, "Every creature deserves a fighting chance." "I know, sweetheart," Sam murmured, unsure if he was speaking to the wolf or to his wife's spirit. "I hear you." The decision crystallized with painful clarity. His last $800 sat in his wallet, money earmarked for the heart medication that kept his aging ticker steady. The bank payment wasn't due for another week, but the wolf needed immediate veterinary care that would cost every penny he had. Sam's phone buzzed insistently as he carefully lifted the wolf, her weight substantial but manageable for a man who'd spent decades wrestling with livestock. Michael's name flashed on the screen, the third call in an hour. Sam declined it, knowing his son would lecture him about taking unnecessary risks, about his responsibility to preserve his own health above all else. The 4-mile walk to Dr. Elena Martinez's clinic stretched ahead like a marathon. The wolf lay surprisingly still in his arms, her breathing gradually steadying, as if she understood that help was coming. Sweat beaded on Sam's forehead despite the cool morning air, and his lower back began its familiar ache, but he pressed on, one foot in front of the other. Halfway to town, his phone rang again. This time, an unknown number appeared on the screen. Against his better judgment, Sam answered. "Samuel Whitehorse?" The voice was gravelly, unfamiliar, with an edge that made Sam's skin crawl. "Who's asking?" "A friend. Word of advice. Mind your own business out there." Some things are better left alone. The line went dead, leaving Sam staring at his phone in confusion and growing alarm. The wolf stirred in his arms, her blue eyes opening to fix on his face with what looked remarkably like concern. "What kind of trouble are you in, girl?" Sam asked softly, adjusting his grip as they reached the outskirts of town. The clinic's red brick building came into view, and he felt a surge of relief mixed with dread. Dr. Martinez would ask questions he wasn't sure he could answer, and the anonymous phone call suggested that helping this wolf might bring consequences he hadn't anticipated. As he pushed through the clinic's front door, setting off the cheerful chime that announced arrivals, Sam caught his reflection in the glass. His face was pale, his gray hair disheveled, his jacket stained with blood and dirt. He looked like exactly what he was, an old man who'd bitten off more than he could chew. But the wolf's steady breathing against his chest reminded him of Dorothy's unwavering faith in doing what was right, regardless of personal cost. Some battles were worth fighting, even when the odds seemed impossible. Dr. Elena Martinez looked up from her examination table with the kind of expression that had become too familiar in Sam's life, gentle concern mixed with professional worry. Her dark eyes reflected the fluorescent lights as she peeled off latex gloves, the wolf now sedated and breathing steadily on the metal surface between them. "Sam, this isn't just any wolf," she said, her voice carrying the weight of years spent treating both domestic and wild animals in Montana's unforgiving landscape. "This is a female from the northern Rocky Mountain subspecies, extremely rare. There are maybe 50 left in the wild." Sam felt his knees weaken as the implications crashed over him. An endangered species, federal protection, the kind of animal that drew the attention of wildlife agencies, conservation groups, and apparently people willing to track her with electronic devices. "There's more," Dr. Martinez continued, pulling up an X-ray on her computer screen. The ghostly image of the wolf's skeleton appeared, and there, nestled in her rib cage, were 4 distinct shapes. "She's pregnant, about 6 weeks along. Sam, you didn't just save a wolf. You saved an entire generation of one of North America's rarest predators." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Sam gripped the examination table's edge, his weathered hands trembling as the magnitude of the situation settled into his bones. $800, his medication money, suddenly felt like both everything and nothing at all. "The tracking device is more sophisticated than anything I've seen," Dr. Martinez added, showing him the small electronic chip she'd removed from the wolf's neck. "Military grade. Someone invested serious money in following this particular animal." Sam's phone buzzed with another call from Michael. This time he answered, needing to hear his son's voice even if it meant facing another lecture about his increasingly erratic behavior. "Dad, where the hell are you?" "I've been calling all morning." Michael's professional calm was fraying at the edges, the way it did when he felt his father slipping beyond his ability to control or protect. "I'm at the vet clinic in town," Sam said simply. "The vet? Are one of the horses sick? Dad, you can't keep spending money on—" "I found a wolf." The silence stretched so long Sam wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Michael's voice returned, tight with barely controlled frustration. "You found a what?" "A pregnant wolf, caught in a snare. She's endangered, Mike. I couldn't just leave her to die." "Jesus Christ, Dad. Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into? Endangered species have federal protection. There are protocols, agencies that handle this stuff. You can't just—" "I can't just what? Let her suffer while bureaucrats shuffle paperwork?" Sam's voice rose, drawing concerned glances from the clinic staff. "Your mother never hesitated when something needed saving. Mom isn't here anymore." Michael's shout echoed through the phone's speaker. "And frankly, Dad, maybe it's time you accepted that you're not equipped to handle situations like this on your own. I'm driving up there tonight with some papers for you to sign. We need to talk about your future." The line went dead, leaving Sam staring at his phone with a mixture of hurt and defiance. Dr. Martinez pretended to busy herself with charts while he composed himself, her tactful silence a small mercy in the storm of his crumbling world. "What are my options here, Elena?" Sam asked finally. "Legally, I should report this to Fish and Wildlife Services immediately. They'll want to relocate her to a controlled breeding facility, monitor the pregnancy, ensure the pup's survival." She paused, studying his face. "But that's not what you want to hear, is it?" Sam thought of his empty ranch, Dorothy's unused animal hospital, the hollow silence that had replaced years of purposeful chaos. "What would you do if she were your patient?" "Sam, I can't advise you to—" "I'm not asking for legal advice. I'm asking what your heart tells you." Dr. Martinez glanced toward the sedated wolf, her professional mask slipping to reveal the same compassion that had drawn her to veterinary medicine decades earlier. "She needs constant monitoring for the next week. The pregnancy is high risk due to stress and malnutrition. Ideally, she'd stay somewhere quiet with someone who understands animal behavior and has medical training. Someone like a retired Army veterinarian? Someone exactly like that." She met his eyes directly. "But Sam, if you do this, you're taking on enormous responsibility. And whoever was tracking her, they're not going to stop looking." The anonymous phone call echoed in Sam's memory. The weight of federal law pressed against his conscience. His son's threats about assisted living facilities loomed like storm clouds. Every rational thought screamed that he should walk away. Let the professionals handle this mess. But as the wolf stirred on the examination table, her brilliant blue eyes fluttering open to fix on his face, Sam heard Dorothy's voice as clearly as if she were standing beside him. "Some battles choose you, Samuel. You don't get to pick which ones matter." "I'll take her home," he said quietly. "Tonight." Dr. Martinez nodded slowly, then moved to a locked cabinet behind her desk. "You'll need these," she said, producing bottles of antibiotics, pain medication, and prenatal vitamins. "And Sam, off the record, there's a reason she trusts you. Wolves don't usually accept help from humans unless they sense something familiar." As evening shadows lengthened across the clinic floor, Sam prepared to carry more than just a wounded animal back to his ranch. He was carrying hope, responsibility, and the first real purpose he'd felt since Dorothy's death. The reckoning with Michael could wait until morning. Tonight, he had a wolf to save. The wolf had been living in Dorothy's old treatment room for 3 days when Sam discovered the journal. Luna, as he'd taken to calling her, watched from her makeshift bed of horse blankets as he searched through Dorothy's desk for medical supplies. Her blue eyes followed his every movement with an intelligence that both comforted and unnerved him. "Easy, girl," Sam murmured, noting how Luna's ears perked at the sound of his voice. She'd grown stronger each day, accepting food and medication with surprising docility. Unlike any wild animal he'd ever treated, she seemed to understand that he meant no harm. The leather-bound journal fell from behind a stack of veterinary manuals, its pages yellowed with age and marked by Dorothy's careful handwriting. Sam's hands trembled as he opened it, recognizing his late wife's neat script immediately. The first entry was dated 5 years ago. May 15th. Found a pregnant wolf near the north fence line today. Beautiful creature, silver-gray coat, and the most unusual blue eyes. She was exhausted, probably traveled miles looking for a safe place to give birth. Sam was in town, so I made the decision to help her myself. Set up a den in the old root cellar, brought her water and food. She let me examine her. 4 pups, due any day. Sam's breath caught in his throat. Luna lifted her head, sensing his distress, her tail giving a tentative wag. He continued reading, his vision blurring with unshed tears. May 18th. The wolf gave birth last night. 4 healthy pups, all with their mother's distinctive blue eyes. She's been incredibly gentle, letting me check on them. I've named her Luna, because she howls to the moon each evening, Sam would have my hide if he knew I was harboring wolves on federal land, but some things are bigger than regulations. The entries continued for 2 months, documenting Luna's recovery and the pup's growth. Dorothy had photographed everything, and Sam found himself staring at pictures of a wolf who looked identical to the one now resting in his wife's old treatment room. July 20th. Time to let them go. Luna's leg has healed completely and the pups are old enough to survive in the wild. I've never felt such a mixture of joy and heartbreak. Luna seemed to understand this was goodbye. She pressed her forehead against my hand before disappearing into the forest with her family. I pray they stay safe. Sam's hands shook as he reached the final entry, dated just 3 weeks before Dorothy's cancer diagnosis. If you're reading this, Sam, it means I'm gone and you found my secret. I know you'll think I was reckless, but some creatures choose their people. If Luna or her offspring ever need help, don't hesitate. They remember kindness, and they repay it in ways you can't imagine. Love finds a way to come full circle. Your devoted Dorothy. My God, Sam whispered, looking at Luna with new understanding. This wasn't just any wolf. This was one of Dorothy's pups, grown and now facing her own crisis. The blue eyes, the unusual tameness, the way she'd allowed him to carry her for miles. It all made sense now. Luna rose carefully from her bed and approached him, pressing her forehead against his hand exactly as Dorothy had described her mother doing years ago. Sam felt tears streaming down his weathered cheeks as the profound connection between past and present washed over him. The moment was shattered by the sound of vehicles in his driveway. Sam peered through the window to see 2 trucks, Michael's familiar silver pickup and a black SUV he didn't recognize. His son emerged from the truck carrying a briefcase, his face set in the determined expression Sam knew all too well. From the SUV stepped a man in his 40s, tall and lean with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "Stay quiet, girl," Sam told Luna, who had retreated to the shadows at the sound of strangers. He closed Dorothy's journal and slipped it into his jacket pocket before heading to the front door. Michael didn't bother with pleasantries. "Dad, this is Rick Henderson from the Wildlife Protection Agency. He's here about the wolf." Rick Henderson extended a hand, his grip firm, but his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Mr. Whitehorse, I understand you've been caring for an injured wolf. I'm here to help with the situation." Something about the man's manner set Sam's teeth on edge. His smile was too practiced, his eyes too calculating. "How did you know about the wolf?" "Word travels fast in small communities," Rick replied smoothly. "We've been tracking reports of illegal snares in this area. When Dr. Martinez mentioned your situation, we knew we needed to intervene immediately." Sam's military instincts, honed by decades of recognizing threats, screamed warnings. Dr. Martinez was bound by patient confidentiality. She wouldn't have contacted federal agencies without consulting him first. "I'd like to call Elena to confirm she contacted you." "Dad, stop being paranoid," Michael interjected, his professional frustration evident. "Mr. Henderson is here to help. The wolf needs to be relocated to a proper facility where professionals can monitor her pregnancy." "She's doing fine where she is," Sam said firmly. "I've been treating animals longer than you've been breathing, son." Rick's eyes hardened almost imperceptibly. "Mr. Whitehorse, I'm afraid this isn't negotiable. Harboring an endangered species without permits is a federal crime. I could have you arrested, but I'm willing to overlook the violation if you cooperate." "Arrested?" Michael's voice rose an octave. "Dad, you didn't tell me you were breaking federal law." Sam studied Rick's face, noting the way his left eye twitched when he spoke, the slight tremor in his hands. This man was nervous about something, and it wasn't just bureaucratic protocol. "I'll need to see your credentials." Rick produced a badge and identification that looked official enough, but Sam's unease continued to grow. Something about the man's knowledge of his ranch layout, the way his eyes darted toward the barn where Dorothy's treatment room was located, suggested familiarity that went beyond official interest. The wolf is pregnant and shouldn't be moved unnecessarily, Sam argued. Any veterinarian will tell you that stress can cause complications. We have a state-of-the-art facility in Billings, Rick countered. She'll receive the best possible care. I want to see this facility first. Michael stepped between them, his patience finally snapping. Dad, enough! This is exactly the kind of stubborn behavior that proves you can't live alone anymore. You're making decisions based on emotion, not logic. And you're making decisions based on fear, Sam shot back. Fear that your old man might actually know what he's doing. You spent $800, your medication money, on a wild animal. You're receiving threatening phone calls. You're hiding an endangered species on your property. How is any of this rational behavior? Rick's eyes sharpened at the mention of threatening phone calls. Someone's been threatening you, Mr. Whitehorse? Sam hesitated, realizing he'd revealed more than intended. Anonymous call. Probably just a prank. What exactly did they say? Something about minding my own business. Sam watched Rick's face carefully, noting the slight tightening around his eyes. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Dad! Michael's voice cracked with exasperation. You're acting paranoid. Mr. Henderson is trying to help. But Sam's instincts were screaming now. Something about Rick Henderson didn't add up. The too familiar way he moved around the property, the convenient timing of his arrival, the knowledge of details that shouldn't have been public information. I think you gentlemen should leave, Sam said quietly. I'll contact Fish and Wildlife Services myself tomorrow morning. Rick's mask slipped slightly, revealing something cold and predatory beneath the official veneer. I'm afraid I can't allow that, Mr. Whitehorse. The wolf needs to be relocated immediately. Over my dead body. Michael threw his hands up in defeat. That's it, Dad. I'm calling Dr. Reeves tomorrow morning. You're clearly not capable of making rational decisions anymore. Dr. Reeves? Sam felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. A psychiatrist who specializes in elderly care. If he determines you're mentally incompetent, the state will appoint a guardian to make decisions for you. The words hit Sam like physical blows. His own son was threatening to have him declared incompetent, to strip away his autonomy and independence. The ranch, Dorothy's legacy, everything he'd built, all of it would be taken away. From somewhere in the barn came a low, mournful howl that raised the hair on Sam's arms. Luna was calling, whether in distress or warning he couldn't tell. But Rick Henderson's reaction was immediate and telling. His hand moved instinctively toward his jacket, where the outline of a concealed weapon was barely visible. What was that? Michael asked, his anger momentarily forgotten. Just coyotes, Sam lied, his eyes never leaving Rick's face. The man was definitely armed, definitely dangerous, and definitely not who he claimed to be. I think we should check the barn, Rick said, his voice carrying a new edge of authority that sounded nothing like a federal bureaucrat. I think you should leave my property, Sam replied, his own voice dropping to the low, steady tone he'd used to command respect in the Army. Now. The standoff stretched between them. 3 men with competing agendas and the growing darkness of Montana evening closing around them like a fist. In the distance, Luna howled again, and this time she was answered by other voices from deep in the forest. The wolves were gathering, and Sam had the unsettling feeling that the real battle was just beginning. The confrontation erupted like a summer thunderstorm, sudden, violent, and impossible to ignore. Rick Henderson's carefully maintained facade cracked completely when Luna's howls grew more urgent from the barn, joined now by answering calls from the surrounding forest that made the hair on Sam's neck stand on end. That's not coyotes, Rick snarled, his hand moving openly to the weapon concealed beneath his jacket. Where is she, old man? Michael stepped backward, his face pale with dawning comprehension that this situation had spiraled far beyond a simple bureaucratic disagreement. "Dad, what's going on? Who is this guy really?" Sam's military training kicked in, years of combat experience flooding back despite his aging body. He positioned himself between his son and the armed man, his mind calculating distances and escape routes. "Michael, get in your truck and drive to town. Call Sheriff Martinez. I'm not leaving you." "Go!" Sam's command voice brooked no argument, the same tone that had once moved soldiers through hostile territory. Rick pulled his weapon, a high-end hunting pistol that gleamed in the porch light. "Nobody's going anywhere until I get what I came for. That wolf is worth more money than your pathetic ranch will ever see." The truth hit Sam like a physical blow. This wasn't about wildlife protection or federal regulations. This was about money. Illegal trafficking in endangered species. Luna wasn't just rare. She was a breeding female worth tens of thousands of dollars on the black market. "You're the one who's been tracking her," Sam said, pieces falling into place. "The snares, the anonymous phone calls. You've been hunting her." "Hunting?" Rick laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "I prefer to think of it as harvesting. Do you have any idea what private collectors will pay for a breeding pair of northern Rocky Mountain wolves? Especially ones with those unusual blue eyes?" Michael fumbled for his phone, but Rick swung the gun toward him. "Drop it. Kick it over here." "Please." Michael's voice cracked with terror. "My kids need their father. Whatever this is about, we can work something out. Your father should have minded his own business." Rick's eyes never left Sam's face. 3 days ago, this could have been simple. Quick dart, load her in the truck, disappear. But no, the old hero had to play veterinarian. From the barn came the sound of splintering wood. Luna was trying to escape, her maternal instincts likely driving her to protect her unborn pups. The other wolves in the forest had grown quiet, but Sam could sense their presence in the darkness beyond the yard lights. "She's not just any wolf, is she?" Sam said, stalling for time while his mind raced through options. "You've been tracking her family for years." Rick's smile turned predatory. "Her mother was my first big score 5 years ago. Made enough money to quit my day job and focus on this full-time. But this little lady got away with 3 siblings. I've been hunting them ever since." The casual mention of Luna's mother sent ice through Sam's veins. Dorothy's journal entries flashed through his memory. The gentle wolf who had trusted his wife enough to give birth in their root cellar, who had pressed her forehead against Dorothy's hand in goodbye. "You killed her mother." "Business is business, old man. Sentimental attachment is for people who can't afford to eat." Rick gestured with the gun toward the barn. "Now, are you going to show me where she is, or do I start shooting family members until you cooperate?" The threat against Michael shattered Sam's remaining composure. Rage flooded through him, hot and cleansing, burning away years of grief and self-doubt. This man had killed Dorothy's wolf, had tortured Luna with snares and tracking devices, and now threatened to murder his son. "You want her?" Sam's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. "Come and take her." He lunged forward, his 66-year-old body moving with surprising speed born of desperation and fury. Rick fired, the shot going wide as Sam tackled him to the ground. They rolled across the gravel driveway, grappling for control of the weapon. Michael broke from his paralysis, diving for his dropped phone while his father and Rick wrestled in the dirt. His hands shook as he dialed 911, his voice barely coherent as he tried to explain the situation to the dispatcher. Sam felt his age in every joint and muscle as Rick's younger, stronger body began to overpower him. The gun skittered across the gravel, both men scrambling after it. Rick's elbow connected with Sam's ribs, sending lightning bolts of pain through his chest. Just as Rick's fingers closed around the weapon's grip, the night exploded with sound. Luna burst from the barn, her injured leg barely slowing her as she launched herself at Rick with 60 pounds of protective fury. Her jaws clamped down on his gun arm, and his scream of pain and terror echoed across the ranch. "Get her off me! Get her off!" But Luna wasn't attacking randomly. Her bite was controlled, calculated to disable rather than kill. She held Rick's arm in her powerful jaws, preventing him from using the weapon while avoiding major arteries. It was the restraint of an intelligent predator who understood the difference between defense and murder. Sam struggled to his feet, every muscle protesting. "Easy, Luna, I've got this." The wolf's blue eyes met his, and she released Rick's arm with surgical precision. Rick clutched his wounded limb, blood seeping between his fingers, his face pale with shock and pain. "She's trained," Rick gasped, his professional composure completely shattered. "That's not normal wolf behavior. How did you—" "She's not trained," Sam said quietly, retrieving the fallen weapon. "She's grateful." In the distance, sirens began to wail. Michael's 911 call bringing help that would hopefully arrive before Rick's companions realized something had gone wrong. Because Sam was certain now that Rick wasn't working alone. Operations like this required networks, connections, people willing to look the other way for the right price. Luna limped to Sam's side, her weight pressing against his leg in a gesture of trust and protection. Despite her own injuries, despite carrying unborn pups, she had risked everything to save him. Just as her mother had once trusted Dorothy, Luna had chosen to trust him. "The sheriff's coming," Michael called out, his voice shaky but determined. "ETA 5 minutes. Rick tried to sit up, his wounded arm cradled against his chest. "You have no idea what you've done, old man. I'm not the only one looking for her. My partners will find themselves facing federal charges," Sam interrupted. "Real federal agents this time, not pretenders with fake badges." "That badge is real," Rick snarled. "I used to work for Fish and Wildlife before I realized there was more money in private enterprise." The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. A federal employee turned poacher, using his official credentials and knowledge to hunt the very animals he was supposed to protect. It explained his familiarity with procedures, his ability to track Luna so effectively, his knowledge of her value on the black market. As the sirens grew louder, Luna raised her head and released a long, mournful howl that was immediately answered by multiple voices from the darkness. The sound sent chills down Sam's spine, not from fear, but from recognition of something ancient and powerful. "They're calling her home," he murmured, understanding suddenly that this confrontation was far from over. Rick might be captured, but his partners were still out there, still hunting. Michael approached cautiously, his eyes wide with amazement as he took in the sight of his elderly father standing protectively over a wounded wolf and an armed poacher. "Dad, I don't understand what just happened here." "Your grandmother saved Luna's mother 5 years ago," Sam said simply. "Tonight, Luna returned the favor." The sheriff's vehicles roared into the driveway, their lights painting the scene in harsh red and blue. As deputies emerged with weapons drawn, Sam realized that his quiet life of grief and solitude was officially over. Whatever came next, he would face it with Luna at his side and Dorothy's memory guiding his steps. But first, they had to survive the night. Because in the darkness beyond the flashing lights, other predators were gathering, human ones who valued money over life and saw endangered species as nothing more than profitable commodities. The real battle was just beginning. The revelation struck Sam like a thunderbolt in the sheriff's interrogation room, where fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and the smell of stale coffee permeated everything. Sheriff Martinez had been questioning Rick Henderson for 2 hours when the man's lawyer arrived, a sharp-dressed woman from Billings who immediately demanded to speak with her client privately. It was during this break that Deputy Collins pulled Sam aside, his young face grave with the weight of information that would shatter everything Sam thought he knew about his family. "Mr. Whitehorse, we ran Henderson's real name through the system," Collins said quietly. "His full name is Richard Samuel Henderson, but 15 years ago he was Richard Samuel Whitehorse." The words hit Sam like a physical blow. His coffee cup slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering against the linoleum floor in a cascade of ceramic shards and brown liquid. "That's impossible." "DNA confirms it, sir." "Rick Henderson is your son." Sam's world tilted sideways. Richard, little Ricky, who used to follow him around the ranch, begging to help with the animals. The boy who had shared Dorothy's love for every wounded creature they brought home. The young man who had stormed out 15 years ago after a bitter argument about Dorothy's illegal animal rescue operations, screaming that he was tired of living like criminals just to save worthless animals. "He changed his name legally after moving to California," Collins continued. "Worked for Fish and Wildlife Services for 5 years before going freelance. Mr. Whitehorse, I need to ask, did you know your son was involved in illegal wildlife trafficking?" Sam couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. His eldest son, the child who had once cried when they couldn't save an injured owl, had become the monster hunting Luna and her family. The man who had killed Dorothy's wolves, who had threatened to murder Michael, who had turned his knowledge of animal behavior into a weapon of exploitation. Through the interrogation room's one-way glass, Sam watched Richard, sit with his bandaged arm, his face a mask of cold indifference. There was nothing left of the boy who used to sleep in the barn when a sick foal needed watching through the night. Michael appeared at Sam's elbow, his own face pale with shock. "Dad, Collins told me. How is this possible?" "I don't know," Sam whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't know what happened to him." The door to the interrogation room opened and Richard's lawyer emerged, her expression grimly professional. She approached Sheriff Martinez with a manila folder that seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. "My client is prepared to cooperate fully in exchange for reduced charges," she announced. "He has information about a wildlife trafficking network that spans 4 states. Sheriff Martinez nodded grimly. "What kind of information?" "Names, locations, buyers, the whole operation." The lawyer's eyes found Sam through the doorway. "But he has one condition. He wants to speak with his father alone." Sam felt Michael's hand on his shoulder, steadying him as his legs threatened to give out. "Dad, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." Sam straightened his shoulders, drawing on reserves of strength he'd thought exhausted. "He's still my son." The interrogation room felt smaller with Richard in it. 15 years had changed him, hardened his features, put lines around his eyes that spoke of choices Sam couldn't begin to fathom. But when Richard looked up and saw his father, something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe, or regret. "Hello, Dad." Sam sat down heavily in the metal chair across from his eldest son. Between them lay 15 years of silence, an ocean of hurt and misunderstanding that seemed impossible to bridge. "Why?" Sam's voice came out as barely a whisper. Richard was quiet for so long that Sam wondered if he would answer at all. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old wounds and newer ones. "Do you remember what you said the night I left, when I told you that Mom's rescue operation was going to get us all arrested?" Sam closed his eyes, the memory rushing back with painful clarity. Richard had been 22, fresh out of college, full of certainty about right and wrong. The argument had started over a bear cub Dorothy was rehabilitating without permits. "You said I cared more about following rules than saving lives," Sam admitted. "And you were right. But I was so angry, Dad. Angry that we lived like outlaws. angry that you and Mom put your principles above our family's security. I wanted a normal life where wildlife officers weren't potential enemies. So you became one of them. I became one of them, Richard repeated, his voice hollow. I thought if I worked within the system, I could make a difference legally. I genuinely believed that for a while. What changed? Richard's laugh was bitter. Reality. Do you know how much bureaucracy there is in federal wildlife protection? How many animals die while paperwork gets processed? How many corrupt officials look the other way for the right price? Sam watched his son's face, seeing echoes of the idealistic boy who had once shared Dorothy's passion for healing. The first time I took money to ignore a poaching report, I told myself it was just once. Just to pay off student loans, just to get ahead. Richard's voice dropped to a whisper. But once you cross that line, Dad, it gets easier every time. The wolves, Sam said quietly. Luna's family were supposed to be my retirement plan. Richard met his father's eyes directly for the first time. Breeding pairs of endangered subspecies sell for incredible money to private collectors. I'd been tracking that pack for 3 years. You killed her mother. I killed Dorothy's wolf, Richard corrected, and the words landed like physical blows. I didn't know about Mom's journal until tonight. I didn't know she'd saved them. Sam felt tears streaming down his face. His son, his own flesh and blood, had murdered Dorothy's gentle wolf, had tortured Luna with snares and tracking devices, had turned everything Dorothy stood for into a commodity to be exploited. She trusted your mother, Sam said. That wolf pressed her forehead against Dorothy's hand the day she released her and her pups. Your mother wrote about it in her journal, how she'd never felt such a pure connection with a wild creature. Richard's composure finally cracked. His shoulders shook as 15 years of suppressed emotion broke free. I didn't know, Dad. I swear to God, I didn't know. Would it have mattered if you did? The question hung between them like a blade. Richard struggled with it, his face cycling through emotions Sam hadn't seen there since he was a child. I don't know, Richard finally admitted. I honestly don't know what I've become. Sam reached across the table and took his son's uninjured hand. The skin was rougher than he remembered, marked by years of choices that had led them to this sterile room with its fluorescent lights and broken dreams. You're still my son, Sam said simply. And Dorothy's son. That hasn't changed. How can you say that after what I've done? Because love doesn't die, Richard. It just changes shape. Your mother taught me that. Outside the interrogation room, Luna was being transferred to a secure wildlife facility where she could deliver her pups safely. The trafficking network Richard would expose would save countless other animals. Justice would be served in its imperfect way. But for Sam, sitting in that small room with his lost son, justice felt less important than the possibility of redemption. The call came at 3 in the morning, jolting Sam from restless sleep in the hospital waiting room chair where he'd been keeping vigil. Dr. Martinez's voice carried a weight that made his blood turn to ice before she even spoke the words that would shatter his world again. Sam, you need to get here immediately. It's Emma. The drive to the wildlife facility felt like swimming through molasses, every second stretching into eternity while Michael gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. They'd left Emma with Sarah for the evening, thinking she'd be safer away from the ranch while federal agents processed the crime scene. None of them had anticipated that an 8-year-old girl's curiosity about her grandfather's wolf friend would lead her to slip away from her mother's watchful eye. The facility's emergency lights painted everything in harsh reds and blues as they arrived. Sarah stood in the parking lot, her face streaked with tears, clutching Lucas against her side like a lifeline. Sheriff Martinez approached them with the careful walk of someone bearing unbearable news. Emma followed Luna's scent trail from the ranch, she explained, her professional composure barely containing her own distress. We think she was trying to find Luna to make sure she was okay. She made it about 3 miles into the wilderness before... Before what? Sam's voice came out as a croak. Before she collapsed. We found her unconscious near Crystal Creek. Her blood sugar had crashed. Severe diabetic ketoacidosis. She's been without her insulin for at least 6 hours. The words hit Sam like artillery shells, each one destroying another piece of his heart. Emma's diabetes had been diagnosed 2 years ago, a condition that required constant vigilance and regular medication. In the chaos of the evening's events, no one had thought to check if she'd taken her evening insulin dose. "Where is she now?" Michael demanded, his medical training overriding his panic. "Life flighted to Billings General. The paramedics got her stabilized, but..." Sheriff Martinez's voice trailed off, leaving the terrible possibilities unspoken. The helicopter ride to Billings passed in a blur of rotor noise and desperate prayers. Sam held Emma's small hand while medical personnel worked around them, her face pale as porcelain against the white sheets. Her breathing was shallow and irregular, and the monitors attached to her chest painted alarming pictures in beeping numbers. "Stay with us, sweetheart," Sam whispered, his voice barely audible over the aircraft's noise. "Your Grandma Dorothy is waiting to see you grow up. Don't you dare leave us now." But even as he spoke the words, Sam felt the crushing weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. If he hadn't brought Luna home, if he hadn't gotten involved in Richard's criminal enterprise, if he hadn't created the chaos that led to Emma wandering into the wilderness alone, none of this would be happening. At the hospital, they wheeled Emma directly into the ICU while the family gathered in another sterile waiting room that smelled of disinfectant and despair. The pediatric endocrinologist, Dr. Rebecca Chen, emerged after what felt like hours with an expression that revealed nothing and everything. "We've got her blood sugar stabilized for now," she reported, her voice professionally calm, "but she's in a diabetic coma. The next 48 hours will be critical." Sarah collapsed into Michael's arms, her sobs echoing off the waiting room walls. Lucas pressed himself against Sam's side, his 10-year-old mind struggling to process the possibility that his sister might not wake up. "Can we see her?" Sam asked. Dr. Chen nodded toward the ICU doors. "Family only. 2 at a time." The sight of Emma connected to machines and monitors nearly brought Sam to his knees. Her small body looked impossibly fragile against the hospital bed, her usually bright face slack and unresponsive. Sarah took one side of the bed while Sam took the other, both of them afraid to touch her, afraid that even the gentlest contact might somehow make things worse. "This is my fault," Sam said finally, the words torn from somewhere deep in his chest. "All of it. Richard, the wolves, Emma being here. It's all because I couldn't let go of Dorothy's crusade." "Dad, don't." Sarah's voice was thick with tears but firm with conviction. "Emma chose to go looking for Luna because she loves you, because you taught her to care about animals the way Grandma Dorothy did, and now she might die because of that lesson. Or she might live because of it." Sarah reached across Emma's still form to take her father's weathered hand. "You saved Luna. You stood up to Richard when he was threatening our family. You did what Grandma would have done." Outside Emma's room, the hospital moved through its midnight rhythms of healing and heartbreak. But inside, time seemed suspended, measured only by the steady beep of monitors and the shallow rise and fall of a little girl's chest. It was near dawn when the miracle happened. Emma's eyelids fluttered, and she made a small sound that brought both Sam and Sarah instantly alert. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually finding their faces in the dim ICU lighting. "Grandpa?" Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from the breathing tube they'd removed an hour earlier. "I'm here, sweetheart." Sam felt tears streaming down his face as he gently squeezed her hand. "I'm right here. Is Luna okay? Did they hurt her babies?" Even in her weakened state, Emma's first concern was for the wolf who had become the catalyst for their family's ordeal. Sam looked at Sarah, who nodded through her own tears. "Luna's fine, sweetheart. Her babies were born healthy. 2 little pups with blue eyes, just like their mama." Emma smiled, a weak but genuine expression that lit up her pale face. "Grandma Dorothy would be happy. She always said babies were miracles, no matter what kind." The words hit Sam with the force of divine revelation. Dorothy's voice seemed to whisper through Emma's lips, reminding him that life always found a way to continue, that love created circles that expanded beyond death and loss and human failure. Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway, her professional mask unable to completely hide her relief. "Her numbers are improving rapidly. I think we can move her to a regular room by this afternoon." As the sun rose over Billings, painting the hospital room in gentle gold, Sam watched his granddaughter sleep peacefully for the first time in 18 hours. The monitor showed steady improvement, and the terrible pallor was gradually leaving her face. Michael appeared with coffee and the news that Luna had given birth successfully during the night. 2 healthy pups, both female, both carrying their mother's distinctive blue eyes. The federal wildlife officials had agreed to let Luna recover at a sanctuary closer to home, where Emma could visit once she was well enough. "There's something else," Michael said quietly, settling into a chair beside Sam. "Richard wants to see Emma. He's asked if he can visit once she's released." Sam studied his son's face, seeing the conflict there. After 15 years of absence, Richard wanted to reconnect with his family at the moment of their greatest vulnerability. "What do you think?" Sam asked. "I think," Michael said slowly, "that Grandma Dorothy always believed in second chances, even for people who didn't deserve them." Through the hospital window, Sam could see the Montana mountains rising in the distance, their peaks touched with snow that would soon give way to spring. Somewhere in those mountains, Luna was nursing her newborn pups, starting a new generation that would carry Dorothy's legacy of compassion into the future. Emma stirred in her sleep, her hand tightening around Sam's fingers. In that small gesture, he felt the continuation of love across generations, from Dorothy to him, from him to his children, from all of them to Emma and Lucas and the babies yet to come. The circle was unbroken, even when it seemed like everything was falling apart. Especially then. As the morning light grew stronger, Sam finally allowed himself to believe that they were all going to be okay. Wounded, perhaps. Changed, certainly. But still a family, still bound by the kind of love that Dorothy had taught them could survive anything. Even this. 6 months after Emma's recovery, the White Horse Ranch had transformed into something Dorothy could never have imagined in her wildest dreams. The official sign at the entrance read, "Dorothy White Horse Wildlife Sanctuary," carved from Montana pine and painted in letters that caught the morning sunlight like a promise kept. Sam stood on the front porch of the ranch house, watching Emma lead a small group of elementary school children toward the enclosure where Luna and her 2 pups had made their home. At 9 years old, Emma moved with the confident grace of someone who had stared death in the face and chosen to live more fully because of it. Her voice carried clearly across the yard as she explained wolf behavior to her rapt audience. "Luna's not just any wolf," Emma told the children, her small hands gesturing toward the magnificent silver-gray creature who watched the group with intelligent blue eyes. She's teaching her daughters how to hunt and communicate and be part of a pack. Wolves are family animals, just like us. The transformation hadn't been easy. The federal government's investigation into Richard's trafficking network had taken months to resolve, requiring testimony from Sam, Michael, and even Emma, whose childish observations about the mean man who wanted to hurt Luna had provided crucial evidence. The ranch had been crawling with investigators, wildlife biologists, and legal officials for weeks, but from that chaos had emerged something beautiful. The state of Montana, in partnership with Federal Wildlife Services, had designated the ranch as an official rehabilitation center for injured and orphaned wildlife. Sam's military veterinary background, combined with Dorothy's detailed journals documenting decades of successful animal care, had convinced officials that this was exactly the kind of facility the region needed. Michael had surprised everyone by taking a leave of absence from his Denver practice to serve as the sanctuary's medical director. His initial concerns about his father's competency had evolved into deep respect for the old man's wisdom and experience. Working side by side with Sam had healed wounds neither of them had fully acknowledged existed. Dad was right all along, Michael had told Sarah just the week before. Mom's work wasn't illegal. It was ahead of its time. She was doing rehabilitation and conservation before there were programs for it. Sarah had thrown herself into developing educational programs, bringing school groups to the ranch 3 times a week. Her background in elementary education proved invaluable as she designed curricula that taught children about wildlife conservation, animal behavior, and the delicate balance between human civilization and wild spaces. The financial pressures that had once threatened to destroy the ranch had evaporated. Government grants, private donations, and educational program fees provided a steady income that allowed Sam to pay off the mortgage and invest in proper facilities. The old barn had been converted into a modern veterinary clinic, while new enclosures provided safe spaces for recovering animals. But it was Richard's transformation that had shocked everyone the most. His cooperation with federal investigators had led to the dismantling of a trafficking network spanning 6 states, resulting in dozens of arrests and the rescue of hundreds of animals. In exchange for his testimony, he'd received a reduced sentence of 3 years in federal prison with the possibility of early release for good behavior. He'd asked to see Emma on his first day of supervised leave, arriving at the ranch with the hesitant manner of a man rediscovering how to be part of a family. Emma had studied him with the serious consideration she gave to all of life's important decisions before declaring, "You look sad, Uncle Richard. Luna's babies make me happy when I'm sad. Want to see them?" That simple invitation had broken something open in Richard that he'd kept locked away for 15 years. Sam had watched his eldest son weep as Emma showed him the wolf pups, explaining how their mother had saved her grandfather and how their grandmother Dorothy would have loved them. "I forgot," Richard had whispered, his voice breaking. "I forgot what it felt like to care about something without calculating its value." The rehabilitation process hadn't been smooth. Richard struggled with depression and guilt, requiring therapy and constant support from his family. But gradually, he'd begun to find his way back to the man he'd been before greed and cynicism had corrupted his love for wildlife. Now, as Sam watched Emma lead another group of children through their educational tour, he marveled at how seamlessly the pieces of their fractured family had fitted back together. Not perfectly, the cracks still showed and some wounds would always be tender, but strongly enough to bear the weight of their shared future. Luna chose that moment to approach the fence separating her enclosure from the visitors. She'd grown sleek and healthy in captivity, her blue eyes bright with intelligence and contentment. The 2 pups, now 6 months old and nearly as large as their mother, flanked her with the confident curiosity of young wolves raised in safety. "She remembers you," Emma called to Sam, having noticed Luna's attention. "She always looks for you when new people come." Sam approached the fence, and Luna pressed her forehead against the chain link exactly as her mother had once pressed against Dorothy's hand. The gesture never failed to move him, connecting past and present in a way that felt almost supernatural. "Hello, beautiful girl," he murmured, his fingers finding the spots behind her ears that she particularly enjoyed having scratched. "How are your daughters today?" The pups, whom Emma had named Hope and Faith, despite the scientist's preference for numerical designations, approached with less caution than their mother, but clear respect for the boundaries between wild and tame. They would be released into the wild within the year, their GPS collars already in place to monitor their adjustment to life in the mountains. Luna would remain at the sanctuary. Her early injuries and habituation to humans made her unsuitable for release, but she'd become the centerpiece of the educational program. Children from across the state came to see the wolf who had saved a little girl's grandfather, who had chosen love over fear in a moment of crisis. Doctor. Chen had explained to Sam that Luna's behavior that night, leaving her newborn pups to protect him, was unprecedented in wolf research. Wolves don't typically form attachments to humans strong enough to override maternal instincts, she'd said. Luna's actions suggest a level of emotional intelligence and memory that challenges everything we thought we knew about human-animal bonds. But Sam understood it differently. Luna hadn't been acting from mere animal instinct that night. She'd been honoring a debt of gratitude that spanned generations, repaying Dorothy's kindness to her mother by protecting Dorothy's husband when he needed it most. As the afternoon sun began its descent toward the mountains, the school group departed with promises to return and bring their families. Emma helped Sam secure the animal enclosures for the night, a ritual they'd developed over the months of working together. "Grandpa," Emma said as they walked toward the house, "do you think Grandma Dorothy can see the sanctuary? Do you think she knows what we've done?" Sam considered the question seriously, as he always did with Emma's philosophical inquiries. Around them, the ranch hummed with purposeful activity. Michael was reviewing medical charts in the clinic, Sarah was updating educational materials in her office, and even Richard, on another supervised visit, was helping repair a fence damaged by an overly enthusiastic bear cub. "I think," Sam said finally, "that love doesn't die, sweetheart. It just changes shape. Your grandma's love for animals became our love for this place. Her dreams became our work. In that way, she's more alive now than ever." Emma nodded solemnly, then brightened as a thought occurred to her. "So when Luna's daughters have babies, they'll carry Grandma Dorothy's love too?" "Exactly right." As they reached the house, Sam paused to look back at the sanctuary that had risen from the ashes of his grief and despair. Luna stood sentinel in her enclosure, her blue eyes reflecting the last rays of sunlight. Somewhere in the mountains beyond, her wild cousins roamed free, their populations slowly recovering thanks to conservation efforts like this one. The ranch that had once echoed with emptiness now rang with laughter, learning, and the sounds of healing, both for the animals in their care and for the family that tended them. Dorothy's legacy lived on in every creature they saved, every child they educated, every moment they chose compassion over convenience. Sam smiled as Emma's small hand slipped into his weathered one, connecting the generations in an unbroken chain of love and purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new animals to heal, new opportunities to honor Dorothy's memory. But tonight, as the Montana stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Sam Whitehorse was exactly where he belonged, surrounded by family, sustained by purpose, and grateful for the wolf who had taught them all what it meant to come home. At 66, Sam Whitehorse thought his purpose had died with his beloved wife, Dorothy. Like so many of us who've weathered decades of life's storms, he felt forgotten by his children, burdened by financial worries, and haunted by the question, what's the point of going on? But when Sam carried that dying wolf through the Montana wilderness, he discovered something profound. Our greatest chapters often begin when we think the story is over. The wolf he saved didn't just survive. She created a legacy that healed 3 generations of his fractured family. His son Michael stopped seeing him as a burden and started seeing him as a mentor. His granddaughter Emma found her calling. Even his estranged son Richard found redemption. The ranch that once echoed with loneliness became a sanctuary where wounded creatures, both animal and human, learned to trust and love again. Sam's story reminds us that at 55, 65, or beyond, we're not winding down. We're being called to our most important work. The wisdom we've earned, the love we've learned to give, the second chances we thought were impossible. They're all still waiting for us to claim them. What dream did you set aside that might be calling you back? Have you ever experienced an unexpected second chance that changed everything? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.